you said you were just having fun and not doing anything. When did you start paying attention and start mapping out your path?
Never. That's the crazy part. So like the way I was is I always thought about the next year. I was not a big goal setter. I just, okay, I have to make the next team. What do I need to do? And so when I made my Pee Wee AA team, then it was how do I make Bantams? Then when I got to my sophomore year, it was interesting. Between my Bantam my second year of Bantams and my sophomore year, I didn't do any training that year. That was the year I ended up moving out of my parents' house. I was really burnt out from that dynamic, just to put it, save everybody the time. But that just
Yeah.
dynamic was not healthy. And I wanted, I wanted to do the opposite of what people thought I was going to do. And so I golfed like every day. Realized very quickly I'm a below average golfer in comparison to my buddies that were like, you know, legit golfers. Um, and I didn't train at all that one summer. I was just burnt out of hockey. I was burnt out of like the family dynamic. I moved out. I moved in with my aunt full time. And then it was that year I tried out for the high school team and I played varsity. I was one of the two sophomores that year to still play varsity. Didn't train at all, but I wasn't like dominant. And I had some games I had to play JV and kind of help out there. And that kind of lit a fire under me.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Hockey Journey Podcast, episode number 161, the Jon Swanson Hockey Journey, presented to you by OnlineHockeyTraining.com. I'm your host, Coach Lance Pitlick. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe so you won't miss out on any future episodes. Before we dive in, if you want to learn more about me, my hockey experiences, what I know, and most importantly, how I've been helping hockey players get really good with a stick and puck, just head on over to OnlineHockeyTraining.com and gain instant access to my 10-part video series where I'll show you everything. Consider it my gift to you. Lastly, if you live in Minnesota or are visiting the state of hockey sometime soon and you want to schedule an in-person off-ice stick skills lesson, I'd love to have the opportunity to show you my little world. Go to sweethockeycoach.com, that's sweethockeycoach.com, and watch the video on the homepage for instructions. Thanks, and I look forward to working with you sometime soon. I'm excited to spend some time chatting with Jon Swanson, a guy who's worn a lot of hats in the hockey world. From his playing days at St. Cloud State, to pro stops overseas, to becoming a dedicated coach and teacher of the game, Jon has lived hockey from just about every angle. Beyond the stats and his player accomplishments, what makes Jon's story powerful is how he's turned his passion for the game into a life of service to players, families, and the hockey community. Today we're going to dig into his journey, the highs, the challenges, the lessons, and what continues to drive him forward. Jon Swanson, welcome to the Hockey Journey Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I'm excited. We had a lesson with your daughter. Oh man, has that been a year and a half, 2 years ago? That
Maybe,
long?
maybe even three.
Um, yeah, jeepers, it just goes by fast. But ever since then, I've been paying attention to what you're doing and the posts that you're putting out, and I just appreciate it because I'm learning. You focus on some things that I don't, so I appreciate the time that you're putting into that to educate players and parents. It's very helpful, so I appreciate that. So let's get into it. I know what you're doing now. You're developing elite level players. You've been doing it for a while, but there was a starting point where you were a little kid and we're chasing it just like the people you're trying to help now. So let's just kind of start there. Where did you grow up and what was your childhood like and what kind of drew you to the game of hockey?
So, born and raised in St. Cloud area. Um, I had a cousin that played hockey, so I was kind of in the rink around in diapers. He was playing varsity high school hockey at the time. I was two, and then my other cousin ended up going to St. Cloud State. So we were longtime season ticket holders. I think early '90s at St. Cloud. So I grew up watching a lot of hockey, um, and I I grew up in a way where my parents were very blue collar. Um, I don't think this would fly nowadays, but like I remember second grade, first grade, even kindergarten. Like I would get off the bus and my parents wouldn't get home until 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. I was home a lot by myself, and that clearly would not fly probably in nowadays. But we lived out in the
No.
country, and the bus would drop me off at 3:30, and I had to entertain myself, and so I would do a lot of shooting, honestly, throwing a lot of the ball against the wall, and just like keeping myself entertained. And so I was a really busy body, but I took a huge love for hockey. Like I loved the game. Looking up to my cousins that played, I wanted to be a hockey player, and I think I got on skates at 2.5, 3 years of age, like very young. Um, we actually, the first time I skated, I was in the St. Cloud Times on the front cover because we had a blizzard. It was my first time ever skating. We were on Lake George, and my grandma took me out. My dad grew up, he was a baseball player, so he didn't really know much about skating, but he understood sports and competition. Um, and so, yeah, that's it. I kind of really started young at the age, and I found it as an escape. Um, I probably didn't have like maybe the best childhood. I think we all could, talk about our childhood, and we all had something that happened. But my dad ended up passing away from alcoholism. It's something that kind of impacted him all the way through my relationship. And I actually moved out of our house at 15 and moved in with my aunt. And my aunt pretty much played a really pivotal role in my life. She pretty much raised me, paid for a lot of things, and she is definitely one of the major factors why I got some of the opportunities I was able to get. If she wasn't there, my parents really couldn't afford for me to play, and so there was this kind of serendipity of, I had this rough kind of childhood, not great home situation, but yet I had this other figure that was able to step in and make sure I had skates or I had a stick. And so I think I really loved hockey because it was an escape from maybe what was going on at home. And so I wanted to be on the ice 24/7, whether it be outdoors or at an open skate. I tried to live at the rink. It was truly a place away from home.
Wow. Uh, do you have any other brothers or sisters or?
I have a half sister. She's 13 years older. So I think in combination we lived together for maybe 7 days of my entire like upbringing. So she was never in the
Gotcha.
house. She was gone, and so I was either alone a lot or I was playing with the neighborhood kids a lot. Um, and I love to just be an athlete. Like if we were playing flag football or playing, we didn't play flag football back in the day. It was tackle football or baseball or basketball. I just played whatever sport the neighborhood wanted to play. I just wanted to play outside.
Yeah.
Um, and in a way, I look back, the blessing was I didn't have all the distractions that kids have nowadays.
Right. Oh
I had
yeah.
a bicycle and I had a baseball glove, and that was enough, and a hockey stick. And so it was almost that simplicity that allowed me just I didn't have distractions.
Yeah. Did you play? I mean, I was the same way growing up. It was, during the summer, one day it's playing tennis, then you're playing baseball, soccer, whatever, football. But did you play any other organized sports besides hockey, or was it more just your buddies just goofing off?
So from an organized sports level, I played like t-ball growing up. Quickly got very bored doing that. I think I played 1 year and I was like, this isn't for me. And then I focused, I don't want to say I focused on hockey. I played hockey. I loved hockey. I wanted to play hockey. Um, Fifth grade year, I got asked to come out for football. And somehow I ended up being the quarterback. Um, and I just remember my dad sitting me down. We were in the car, so we were sitting driving, and he said, I don't know if you know this, but like, we don't have money for you to go to college. Like, we're not a very well-off family. If you want a college education, hockey's going to be your path. We can't afford for you to get a knee injury. And I was in
Wow.
fifth grade. I remember it like very clear. He's
Wow.
like, I just don't know if football is like going to be the path for you. Um, and I had done some things at a young level. Now looking back on them, there probably some decent achievements for a young player, but I didn't think anything of it when I was young. Like I remember I waved out to or waved up as a squirt and made the Pee Wee, now would be the Pee Wee AA team. Um, and I was able to achieve some things, but then I was just a kid. I was just playing hockey. I didn't know any better. But I do remember my dad having the conversation with me. And then after that, it was pretty much hockey. I did play golf, but it was hockey first, and then I would play some school golf and things like that. But I didn't get into any other sports, contact sports. Hockey was like the path.
So when when did it, kind of hit you? I mean, at the young age, that's what you wanted to do, but when did you have the realization that, I want to play college hockey? Like where you started, just like what's next? What's after Pee Wees? What's after Bantams? You said you were just having fun and not doing anything. When did you start paying attention and start mapping out your path?
Never. That's the crazy part. So like the way I was is I always thought about the next year. I was not a big goal setter. I just okay, I have to make the next team. What do I need to do? And so when I made my Pee Wee AA team, then it was how do I make Bantams? Then when I got to my sophomore year, it was interesting. Between my second year of Bantams and my sophomore year, I didn't do any training that year. That was the year I ended up moving out of my parents' house. I was really burnt out from that dynamic, just to put it, save everybody the time. But that just
Yeah.
dynamic was not healthy. And I wanted, I wanted to do the opposite of what people thought I was going to do. And so I golfed like every day, realized very quickly I'm a below average golfer in comparison to my buddies that were like, you know, legit golfers. Um, and I didn't train at all that one summer. I was just burnt out of hockey. I was burnt out of like the family dynamic. I moved out. I moved in with my aunt full time. And then it was that year I tried out for the high school team and I played varsity. I was one of the two sophomores that year to still play varsity. Didn't train at all, but I wasn't like dominant. And I had some games I had to play JV and kind of help out there. And that kind of lit a fire under me. So after my sophomore year, I had worked my way up to second line center, and then I kind of started to say, okay, I need to put a little bit more work in. And so it was that summer I started to skate um, on the treadmill down in the Twin Cities, and I started my training though was very non-traditional. I didn't like to lift, so everything I did was very plyometric, skating treadmill, or I shot a ton of pucks in the garage, or I was on the ice. I didn't lift a lot. My, I was a lot of plyometrics, not traditional squatting, lunges. Um,
Where did you get that knowledge or insight where you that wasn't part of that wasn't your jam?
I to this day look back like I was fast. That was one of my major things. And anytime I lifted, I couldn't really understand. And keep in mind, I was 15, 16 years old. Not like it was a concise thought, but um, I never felt like it made me feel fast, but when I got on that treadmill, it felt fast. And so if you watch track athletes, yeah, they have underlying strength and they do lift, but their work is done on the ice or, on a tread. And so I just always felt best like when I felt light and like I always felt like I had that pop in my step, and lifting never gave me that feeling, but skating, running stairs, plyometrics, the skating treadmill made me feel like that quickness. Um, and so you asked like, when did I feel like I was going to be like a college hockey player? I don't think I felt that until in between my junior and senior year. I went to model camp and I led it in scoring. And then I went to Elite League and I was leading that in scoring. And then all of a sudden, I got put on a USHL team. Like somebody just texted me, "Hey, Lincoln picked up your rights." I was like, "What does that mean?" I didn't even know what the USHL was. That's like how I was so. What do I have to do for next year? I never thought about any of it. And then all of a sudden, I came home one day and I was not even a senior quite yet. And I had a voicemail from Craig Dahl at St. Cloud, and he's like, "We want to bring you in and offer you a scholarship." I hadn't given it any thought. Like I was just so like, what do I have to do for the next season? And maybe looking back, it was a beautiful set of blinders because I never focused on where I had to get to. I was just focused on like, where do I got to get to in the next like 6 months?
Yeah. And that's probably the best approach to have. You don't want to get too far out in front of it because there's so many things that can come up in between.
Yeah, it was so when you ask like the training stuff, everybody wanted me to lift. The high school program wanted me to lift. I just never felt fast. And I felt like if I was going to play at the next level, I was really undersized. I played varsity at 5'3", 100 pounds.
Holy
I was
cow!
I was tiny, but I could skate like the wind and I could shoot and I understood the game. And so I was like, yeah, I need to be stronger, but I can't give up my speed.
Yeah.
Like in my mind, weak but really fast still created chances. Really strong and slow and small didn't create the chances. Like I could skate away from people. I didn't want to ever give that up. So I built my training around that.
And you just did it. You did the research, or did you have someone helping you with that was kind of an expert in that field?
I I was stubborn, and I don't think there was much research like back in the day, right? Like it's not like it is now. You know, I have two guys that are at the U of M that I trained in high school, and like the program they did and the science behind it was light years ahead of like I just went with what I felt doing, and I just knew I had to train, but it wasn't like I went off of like this intuition of how it made me feel, and
Right.
there was real no science behind any of that stuff back then because this is this is 20 this would have been 25 years ago, 24 years ago, which
Goes
makes me
by
feel old.
quick.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about. Did you ever get to the state tournament as a high school player?
Nope. Moorhead was always our kind of nemesis. So the year that we made it to the section final, we lost to them. It was my senior year. I ended up having mono, and a bunch of guys that I would eventually play college against were on that team.
Okay.
Ammerman, Barta, Lee. So they I think had like 8 D1 players. They were stacked. I think they took second that year. But that was I went to the state tournament a lot as a fan. I think playing in the final five would be the only thing that comes kind of close to that. Um, so
Yeah. What did you? I mean, what a dream come true to be able to grow up in the area. You were a season ticket holder at St. Cloud since you can remember, and to be able to play there. Was there anyone else courting you to go play college hockey, or it was just St. Cloud right out of the gate and you committed and that was it?
um, I so led Elite League, led the model camp. There were some other schools talking to me. I was supposed to actually go on a visit with the U, um, and Dahl kind of got word of it, and he was like, you need to make a decision on us first before you do that. But looking
Yeah.
back on it, I think there's some pros and cons, right? Being a hometown kid has its own problems. You have your this navigation of your high school buddies, and then you have the team and trying to not like bail on your guys that have been there since day one that you have like core fond memories with and still being a teammate. I found that really challenging. That part was hard. Um, I think it maybe would have been good for me to get out and go to like a Denver. Um, my schools that I was interested in were would have been Denver, St. Cloud, or the U.
Okay.
I never let it get far enough because one of my three is offering me a full ride, and you know a full ride scholarship back in the day was a pretty big deal.
That's
So
still a big deal.
yeah, and so I mean I kind of just said, I got one of my three and they want me. Why risk it to wait? And so I committed. I never even have taken I've never taken an official visit, any of that stuff. I went down there, sat in the office, and he's like, "We want to give you I mean, there was no meeting. It was like, we're gonna give you a full ride. We want you to be a Husky. You've grown up." Craig had watched me since I was a peewee,
Yeah.
and I had known he had watched me. So I mean, and I'd been in the locker room. I had cousins that played there. I'd watched practice. So there was the most non-traditional route. I never even did a tour of the university, anything. I just walked in. We're going to give you a full scholarship, and then I said, can I have a day? And then all of a sudden, the U was going to bring me on a visit, and I got a phone call that said you need to make a decision before you take that visit. And I was like, well, if that's the case, then I'll just go. I'll be a Husky.
Yeah. Good for you. Uh, you know, give me the 20,000 mile view, encapsulate 4 years there. It looks like you were pretty consistent on the scoring. Um, did you guys have any magical seasons where you made a deep run for it?
We had 2 years where we were number one in the country. And then it was funny, I was talking to the coaches today about this. The hardest part, and I don't understand the Big Ten or the NCHC now, but when we played in the WCHA, you go to the Final Five, you got 18,000 fans there. It's insane.
Yeah.
And then we would go to the NCAA regionals, and there'd be 1,500 in the stands. And, a couple times where we were number one for a large majority of the season, and we would get in there as a heavy favorite, and the game just felt it's a weird feeling to play in that environment. You almost feel very uncomfortable. And somebody said it to me, it's like if you could win that first game, that's almost like the hardest win to make. It's just getting that like nerves off the back. And so we made it to the NCAs, and we would get upset by a fourth or third round seed. And so that
Mm.
was kind of my my college journey. It was a lot of buildup. You go to the Final Five, playing those huge games against the U and North Dakota, and then all of a sudden you'd go to the NCAAs and you'd be playing like Clarkson in front of like what felt like a high school crowd.
Yeah. Yeah, you go back to your roots, don't you? Those were, you don't think about those energy sources of games until you don't have it anymore. I mean, we grew up with it. I mean, that's what you grow up as a youth. You got, lucky if you got 50 people in the stands,
Yeah.
parents and friends. But it is when you've been around it and you don't have it, it's definitely something that is missing. Um, Pro hockey, I well before we go there, you talked about um, the challenges with your family, losing your dad. Was there anyone, in high school and college after you moved in with your aunt where, um, you know, this became kind of that mentor that maybe you were missing because of that family dynamic that you had?
No, a lot of probably like true, like not to get into deep like mental stuff, but like just deep internalization, um, and deep rooted probably immaturities that you didn't realize you had. But I look back on it, and I do talk to my kids quite a bit, and wherever they go with their hockey career, no hockey career, what have you. I probably wasted an opportunity because I wasn't a lazy worker, but I wasn't mature enough to understand the opportunity and what I really needed to do. And I never had, and I'm not here to blame, like it is what it is. The path, like it all worked out. I have a beautiful family, great marriage, great opportunity in front of me. But nowadays I feel like kids are set up for a little bit more success than I was, where I needed I needed two things. I needed somebody to probably wring me by the ears, and I needed to be mature enough to listen, which neither of them happened.
Yeah.
Um, and I look at I wasn't ready to go to pro, fully. Like I wasn't ready for college either. I wasn't mature enough with my training yet. Like I did it, but now I look at the way the guys train and just they think about the game. Like I should have been watching more film. Like I look at all the things I should have done. Um, I wasn't as educated as I could have been, or put myself in as good of a situation as I could have. Um, but that's a realization that comes after the fact, not during.
Isn't that the truth? Unfortunately. Uh, um, when you said that you didn't have that maturity. I've told this story before. You think that you have a ceiling of what I'm working hard. Yeah, dang, I'm busting butt. Well, my freshman year at the U, Mike Ramsey would go, um, former NHLer, played in the Olympics. He would go to the U and work out in the summer. And there wasn't anyone really in the gym. And he says, "Hey, you want to do a bike ride together?" And I'm like, "With you? Yeah." And I found out what working hard was, So uh, there's different levels of that, and I was lucky that it happened early in my college career, where I didn't have another year of me thinking that I was working hard enough when I wasn't even coming close to moving the needle at all. Um, Go ahead.
What I was gonna say is, the beautiful part of my mentality of like just figure out where you got to get to next year was hindsight probably the blinders that held me back once I became like a junior A or a college player. Because then I needed to have maturity to say, okay, here's the stepping stones, here's year by year, here's where you need to be strength wise, your nutrition, your sleep. Some of this stuff was not on the forefront then. Here's where your hockey IQ needs to be at. Um, and that part, I feel like maybe I was caught up living in the moment, like really enjoying college and not thinking about like I was just there to be a college player. I didn't have any desire to play pro. But, so I think goal setting is dangerous because it can sometimes you can feel off track and that's not a good feeling. But in the same breath, I probably needed to have a little bit more vision outward. And so yeah, I look back on it and we talk as a family quite a bit about like I don't want to say living in with regret, but I definitely hated hockey when I got done playing. Um, I was
Really?
yeah, I was super resentful of hockey and didn't skate for probably 5, 6 years because all my buddies were in the NHL. Um,
Wow.
you look at the year I played in the USHL, us Minnesota guys that did before and afters. It was me, TJ Oshie, and then I'm spacing the D man from Holy Angels who played for the Islanders. We were the three, and you got two guys that go and have legit, super legit NHL careers, and I make it to the AHL. And that stuff you live with, in a good way or a bad way, and so I had a hard time watching the NHL on TV because it was my buddies, and if you can make it there and you can stick and you get contract 2 or 3, it's life changing.
Yep.
And I didn't. And so and I was real with it, but in the same time, I wasn't angry at anybody. I was angry at myself for, not, and it's too late. Once you're playing pro, it's hard to make. I mean, you needed to start that when you're a freshman in college or
Hmm.
maybe in your high school years. So that's kind of like I mean, we skipped a little bit of the pro, but that's definitely that, 2000 would have been when I retired, probably all the way until 17, 18. I wanted nothing to do with really the game. I didn't want to watch it. But I would watch like high school hockey. I just didn't want to watch the NHL. It
Yeah.
was, it was, it was too close.
So you played some pro. Why didn't you play longer? What I mean, I look at your second year with the Steelhead, or your second year. Yeah, your first year with the Steelhead was your second year. I mean, you're almost a point a game player. Why didn't you play longer pro? Just didn't get the opportunity, so you called it quits, or
There is, like I said, there was some immaturity there that I look back. So I turned pro, and my senior year, I had 10 goals at Christmas for St. Cloud, which is pretty legit. Um, I have GMs calling me, and then all of a sudden I got bumped to the third line. I don't score another goal the rest of the year.
oh,
And they needed some more defensive responsibility. I was a good two-way forward. I'll do it. No big deal. So coming out of it, I ended up signing with would have been Norfolk, which was Tampa Bay's AHL team on a PTO. And I think I had 2 goals, 2 assists in 7 games, and I did well. And they bring me in for a meeting. We would like to sign you. I'm like, okay, this is my chance. They're like, we need you to train more. Yep, I'll do it. I was ready to become mature. And that was the year I think they brought Cooper in and gassed everybody previous to that. And my agent called me at the time and just said, Tampa's going to start with all their draft picks and they're not going to go with any undrafted guys. I said, you know, and that was my first taste of pro hockey. Like I thought if you go to the AHL and you put up over a half point a game, you should get another look at playing in the AHL.
right.
One would think. And so then I went to Manitoba's camp, which was at the time Vancouver, And I went to their AHL camp and I was the last guy there. And they ended up keeping the story went they ended up keeping a guy out of the WHL on the big club, so they had to push a guy down. Well, the GM walks in and says, "Hey, there's other guys we'd like to move down, but you're a free agent, so we have to move you out.
Yeah.
Um, we're going to call you up." And I did well there. I mean, I made their team. I was all set to become a Moose, and hey, I didn't work out with Norfolk, but I earned my spot. I go to Idaho, and I didn't know what to do when I got sent home from Manitoba. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing now. And my captain at the time at St. Cloud called me and he's like, you should go to Boise. And I was like, Boise, Idaho, no way. Like, I want to go to Cali where it's warm, get out of this Minnesota winter. And he's like, no, seriously, great coach there, great environment. You're gonna love it. So I listened to him, went out there, ended up being an all-star. We went to the finals, and I thought I had a really good year, and not once did I get called up. And you look back at some of the immaturities then, the thoughts going through your head. You have a good AHL 7 games with Norfolk, you go to Manitoba, and the thoughts started to just stack in my head of like, you know, and then so finally I was like, look, I want to go to Europe. Like, I'm done here. Like, if this isn't meant to be, like, I'm gonna go to Europe. And so I went back to Idaho, um, resentful, not wanting to be there. I wanted to go to Europe and I wanted to travel Europe, play Europe, make some money. And I ended up signing with Lillehammer in Norway for their playoff run. And it was my second game there. A guy fell on me when he was skating. He fell, he hit the boards and fell back into me. And I ended up tearing my ACL. And
Mm.
so I tore my ACL in what it would have been out there, I think, late February. And so then they thought it was a sprain. I kept telling them I want an MRI. They wouldn't give me an MRI, and I actually kept playing with it. And so I would play the game, my knee would slip, it would come back to place, and then I wouldn't be able to walk for 2 or 3 days. And I ended up playing like 8 games with the torn ACL. I got back here, and the first thing I did is I went to the team doc at St. Cloud. He looked at it. We need to get an MRI. It was tore. Because I never got my MRI in Norway, they wouldn't cover it.
Mm.
And that was kind of the nail in the coffin of like me with hockey. Like you have and it's again, I have my life worked out great. I'm happy where I'm at, but I had the AHL thing happen, then I have the Manitoba thing happen, then I go to Idaho and I do really well, and then I don't get called up. Then I go to Norway, I tear my knee there, I don't get the support, and I was just like, I was done. I was mentally done, and I think I threw all my gear away, didn't skate, didn't want to watch the game, got my surgery, and I went and focused on. And at that time, I ran a couple of companies. I was focused on being an entrepreneur, and I wanted nothing to do with the game. And it wasn't until I had my daughter, and then all of a sudden the memory started pouring back in, and then I got her skating at 3, and then all of a sudden she took a love for the game. My son takes a love for the game, and then I slowly got pulled. I actually got pulled back in to it because of them, and then now we're getting to more modern day present. What happened was I started to look at the training, and I wasn't really thrilled with the way kids were getting trained. I felt like it was kind of glorified babysitting. Um, and so I started to get back on the ice, um, and do what I felt, and it's not to knock anybody else's training. I did what I felt like was appropriate for their age of what they needed. And I've always been heavy with the younger kids. They need to skate well. And so I just started to work with her a ton on her skating, and she ended up getting cut from a team at 9 years old because she didn't stick handle good enough. But she was the best skater on the team. And so I kind of laugh at it today. But so you asked, like, why didn't I play longer pro? Part of it was an ACL. The second part of it was, I think it was like strike one, strike two, strike three, strike four, I'm done. And I probably didn't have that person that's like, keep going, you got this. Like I didn't have that like sounding board. I was just in my own thoughts, becoming my own worst enemy and saying, I'm done.
Today's episode is brought to you by HeadsUpHockey.ai. Heads Up Hockey is a premium off-ice training tool that uses the specially designed Heads Up Crush app to help players build real stick handling skills that actually transfer to the ice. With hundreds of guided lessons and progressions, you'll have structured training that feels like a game but makes you better every day. This one is personal to me. I helped develop the training curriculum, bringing my years of teaching experience into every drill so you can get expert level coaching right from home anywhere in the world. If you want to train smarter, keep your head up, and take your game to the next level, check out headsuphockey.ai. Thank you, Heads Up Hockey, for sponsoring this episode. Now back to the show. It's funny when your kids, when you introduce whatever sport it is and when you see them take gravitating toward it, then all the memories of when you were a child skating on that outdoor rink, by the moonlight or playing knee hockey, they start flooding in, and you start putting all those onto a pegboard, and it's like, holy cow, I at one point I did love this game, and I want to make sure that if my kids are passionate about it, I'm going to do whatever I can to fan that flame. And that's what it looks like you've been doing ever since then.
Yeah, it's funny how it all kind of shakes out. I will tell you, I look back now and regret not playing longer. I wish I would have rehabbed my ACL. I wish I would have matured a little bit. I would have trained a little harder. Now getting into training, I look at some of the gifts that I I was always taught to be so humble that I probably didn't understand how well I did certain things, like my skating, the way I can shoot a puck, my ability to read the game. And now when I start to work with guys, I'm like, oh, like I had a lot of the things. I just needed to mature physically, mentally. And if I would have just had patience, um, and that was probably the greatest thing. I was super impatient. I was an impatient, immature, you know, adult inside, a child inside of an adult's body with some gifts, but I didn't understand how to just kind of let things develop and to be patient and to play the game. And it took me a long time, and I would say I still don't have that part navigated, right? It's super, those are like ingrained youth traits, childhood traits. Um, and I remember I got in really good shape after I rehabbed my knee, and I was like 4 years in, but then I had kids and I wanted to go play. I actually went back to a Idaho Steelhead like reunion game, and the guys are like, "Why are you not playing hockey still?" And I like could skate and like shoot and like handle the puck, and at that point I was already down the path of entrepreneurship. I had three businesses I owned, and I had a family, and I was like, but you always still think there's no way to replace the feeling of playing a game. You
No.
just can't. And that was the part where it took me 5 years of being away from it to realize like some of that maturity to come through.
Yeah. So your was one of the businesses, the three that you were just talking about, X7
No,
hockey?
no. So I had a couple gyms where we did sports performance because I'd always found, oddly enough, even though I didn't I like to train, I just did different styles of training. I always found it really interesting, like what gives the best, like Sidney Crosby, like what gave him an edge, or now McDavid or Bedard or whatever name you want to use. What is the mechanical edges that they had? So I got into sports training and started to work with youth, worked with adults, executives, and that, and then we ran like a oddly enough, we started a sporting event, ended up becoming an international, partnered with Nike, Reebok, 40 countries involved, 15,000 athletes. So next thing
Wow.
you know, like 2 years after retiring, I'm running this large scale fitness event that I started. And then I got into our gyms, ended up doing well. And so we got deep into like consultation, so business consultation, working on teaching people how to acquire clients and how to organize their business and get it set up for structure. So I went from like retiring from hockey to I owned three companies in the next 12 months, and I was like dove head into that. I think I did that because I had no kids and I needed something to pass the time, and I wasn't going to sit there and you know I didn't know what to do with my time, so I just went all in on business.
So when did I mean, you started coaching your kids and uh, your gyms. I mean, was it it wasn't hockey specific. It was just anyone. I'm assuming. Is that right?
Yeah, we had a sports division. So I got right now two guys that skate at the U trained with us. We had a little bit of a sports division. It was kind of invite only, but our main training facility, like clientele, was adults. I got back into hockey. Sloan, which is my oldest, she was probably 9. She went to a tryout and she didn't make the team. She got asked to be a practice player, and that's when I kind of realized I put her in some camps, and I just wasn't thrilled with how they were developing. And so I went and rented ice, and my first year I invited like 12 girls because I always kind of felt like I had a daughter. I felt like the girls don't always get the best coaching. They're kind of looked as like a second rate, player. And so I was like, I'm going to take 12 girls and work with them. And it was odd, but that summer I worked with them and then St. Cloud State. Like, so my first year kind of jumping back into it, I had, some Huskies all of a sudden that came out and I started skating them. The next year, X7 kind of exploded. I started to do more YouTube content, more short form content. And the whole reason I started to create content was I grew up poor. What if I could help educate the parents of the modern day to not get hoodwinked by all this chasing these things that aren't relevant? So I just wanted to create content to help educate people. Like, you think about how much you know about the game and you take for, whether you do it on purpose or not, for granted. And then you talk to somebody, like I was talking to a college buddy of mine, and he was asking me, he didn't know how to size his kids' skates. He had them in too big of skates. And I was like showing him all the things to look at, how the boot needs to fit the foot and how it should tie. And he's like, "How do you know this?" And I was like, I don't know. He's like, "I played Division 1 hockey and I have no clue about any of this stuff." And then that became a YouTube video, and there's, 80,000 views. And so that's where X7 kind of took off. Was it wasn't because I wanted to create hockey camps. I did it because I wanted to have a vehicle to educate kids and parents so that they didn't have to go spend tens of thousands of dollars on development.
Yeah. Fantastic. All right. Well, let's help the parents out there right now. Um, and I've done this with a few people that I've had on the show, but let's say you got a player, a family that is going to let you guide them um, in the hockey development from the first time that they're on the ice um, to, let's say the first few years. What does that look like? Let's talk about, how do you introduce kids to it? I want to talk about um, sharpening skates, like how often, and then a lot of talk about sticks.
Yep.
Let's just start with, you know, how do you introduce a kid to hockey like any other sport? What are some things that you would suggest?
Well, I think if you can introduce a kid to hockey, taking them to like an actual game, NHL game, college game, and just that crowd, that excitement, that speed is is really captivating. Like it's an amazing thing. And then the hard part about hockey is the introduction of skating for the first time is kind of terrible. Like you're not good at it. Like you're walking, right? You're walking in skates. But I look back at our kids as we had fun. We played a lot of tag. Um, like no stick in hand. Hockey's such a complex sport in the sense of you got this tiny little metal you're skating on, you got a stick, you got this thing you're having to kind of control. And so to me, our kids went to the rink a lot and watched a lot of hockey, and that really grew their love for the game, right? And I think that your love for the game has to come before playing the game. Like they have to enjoy watching it, and then I think if you can do anything right with a young kid, um, I think it's skating. Like if you can get them in a skating at a young age and get them the right type of skating, we'll call it lessons, but just doing the right things with or without a stick, kind of, irrelevant. But to me, I think love for the game is really, really important at a young age and then becoming a proficient skater. The game just goes by so fast if you're not good at skating.
Yeah,
Um, it's like the analogy I give people is like it's trying to play tag, but you're not allowed to run. It's not a very
yeah,
fun game.
no. So speaking of, skating, let's say, you're suggesting get them out on the ice. I agree with you. At the beginning, no stick, but a lot of associations or communities that have rinks, they'll have a learn to skate program
Yep.
for the beginning. I think that that's a great start. Uh, but talk a little bit about skate sharpening. If someone's new to this, how often do you have to get a kid skate sharpened? And, if you're skating outside and you're going inside, does that matter?
Yeah, so I think if you look at just gear as a whole, like if we're going to jump into skates, you have to have the right equipment, not the top end equipment, but one of the things, the biggest mistakes I see, and I skate 200, 300 kids a year, um, it is, we have a significant problem with skate sizing. Like 80% of my kids that I see for the first time, skates are way too big. And a lot of times what they get told by these sports shops is grow into them. And if you just look at
Yeah.
if you look at like the balance point, now this is like getting me on a soapbox here, but I don't have a skate in front of me. But if you think about the balance point of a piece of steel, you draw like a line down the exact center. The bigger the skate is, the longer the steel is, the more that balance point gets pushed to their toes of their skates. A great skater or a mechanically sound skater can put their knee over their toes. You can't do that if the center point is has been moved from the center of their foot. And so the first thing I do with all of my kids is you got to get them in the right skate. And the two things are the length of the skate. And what I will say is almost every shop I see, they oversize. And so the general rule I use is take a shoe that is fit correctly, and it's almost three, if it's 2.5 to 3 sizes smaller. And most shops are doing somewhere around 1.5, maybe one size smaller. And the concept is wear a thicker sock. But it doesn't change the balance point of where you just shifted the steel. And that causes the kids to not be able to get the proper shin angle. It also causes them to over tighten the top three eyelets, which now also reduces that shin angle. And so, right from the get go, their skates are too big, and now they're not able to get knees over toes. And now they're going to start to hinge instead of the ankle, they hinge at the hip, which creates this folding forward. Sorry if it's a little too mechanical, but
No.
as a skating coach, that's the first thing that to me is just wrong. The second thing is I look at hollows. You can get into profiles a little bit, but as long as, I think profiles, we can jump into that like when they're a squirt, peewee, bantam. But I I have every kid, if you skate with me and I control your skates, you skate at 3/4. And that's like people are blown away. Oh, you got to weigh so much. No. I believe that the less of the hollow forces the foot, if it wants to stop correctly, they have to lean more. They have to lean into that Y angle. And so it promotes better mechanical positions. And so the two things I really focus on when I get a newer skater, and I still, work with some mites and things of that nature, um, right size skate. And then I move their hollows to kind of a 3/4. My kids personally skate at an inch. I'm at an inch and a quarter. Um, and I think that mechanically, if we get their foot in the right structure, and then you get them forced to lean, and people say, well, they slip. Tell them to lean. The reason why they're slipping is because their skate was such a deep hollow, they didn't have to lean. We want them leaning. We want them on their edges. That's giving them some versatility of we can teach them to slide, we can teach them to glide, and we can teach them to grip. And when you have such a deep hollow, you can't do that. There's no gliding, there's no sliding, there's just grip. And so those are the two things with a younger skater like a mite or even a squirt. I want their skates to fit correctly. Um, I want them to be tied in the right manner where the top two eyelids aren't overly tight. And typically, what I like to do is I'll take a family and say, all right, put your son or daughter in skates, have them do an air squat. Just squat down, and you'll see this vertical shin. Okay, take them out of the skates, let them squat. Oh, look, they have great mechanical form. What changed? Well, we put a skate
Yeah.
on there. And that skate's not, it's reducing the shin angle or the shank to go forward. The skate's too big.
Yeah. What about skate sharpening? How often? for the young kid.
Um, I think Sparks is a great deal. I think that's a great tool that got released. I have no actually don't use personally as Sparks, but I think just the fact that we brought skate sharpeners in home is a great tool. I think if you're going to sharpen your skates at home, you need to know what you're doing. Um, and side stoning is really important. It's not just push the stone on the steel on the side. There's an art to it. It's an actual art. If you're gonna commit to having a machine, you need to commit to learning the art. That
Agreed.
being said, I typically will do I'll do enough passes to take the nick out, but if but I sharpen my kids' skates every day. And the reason I do that is I believe that as soon as you've walked on the edges, as soon as you've skated, you started to roll edges. And so I will sharpen skates daily, but might be just one pass. And I'm
Yep.
just cleaning up the edge. I side stone it, I leather it, hang it back up. If there's a big, deep nick, well, then I'll take that steel down and get that nick out to the point where it's not going to affect skating. Um,
Yep.
And what I see is a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't like my skates to get sharpened that often because I don't like them sharp." Change your hollow,
Yep.
right? Because your skate should really never feel any different, right? So, if kids are rubbing them on plastic to dull them up so my big three things are skates need to fit correctly. Um, we need the right hollow, and then we need good edges.
Let's talk a little bit about the stick now. Sticks are crazy expensive. I haven't bought a stick in a long time. And I had a first lesson with my young niece. She's like 6 or 7. And she came over for the lesson. I looked at the stick and I looked at my sister, and, she played high school hockey. So she knows. I go, "Where did you get this stick, Nicole?" And she said, "Play it against sports." And I said, "Why?" She said, "Because it was only $20." And I said, "What did they have a sale on $20 for a 20-pound stick? Because this thing is a log."
Yep.
So we went to Letterman's or whatever sports stores right there by Pick, and we went in there and got her a stick. And I mean, it's incredible how light the sticks are, but um, I think we share a similar thing, but these young kids, they don't have the hockey muscles in their forearms and their hands yet, that you need this thing as light as possible. Um, are these sticks worth the expense early on? And what are some tips that you would suggest for, taping the blade, taping the knob?
So the first thing, and I have some videos on this, but size each sticks correctly. Uh, and I look at it when you size a stick, I'm also talking like flex and curve and length. Um, Traditionally, if I have a mite skater, I'll put them on their skates and I'll cut to Adam's apple. Now, my pros don't have a stick that short, but if you look at it, I want my mites to have an easier time learning to control the object, right? The puck. And so stick length for a mite, I might be a little on the short side, but it just allows for them to have a little bit more control. From a flex, same thing. Skates are too big, sticks are too stiff. So typically, what I like to see is that after the stick has been cut, the flex point is 34% of body weight plus or minus 3 percentage points. So if you take a 100-pound kid, that's 34 flex after cut. Now each inch you cut off the stick is 3 flex points getting added. And so I had somebody the other day that the kid was 4'8" and they were going to buy him a 40 flex stick and they were going to cut 6 inches off. The kid weighs 100 pounds. And so what I did was I convinced the family, don't buy him a 40 flex, buy him a 30 flex. You're going to end up cutting, um, I think they had to cut an inch and a half off. And so the flex is about a 35.
Yeah.
Um, I'm also a little bit of a stickler on curve at a young age. I like the P28 just because they need a little bit more of a hook to kind of have some control. I personally don't use a P28. Um, it's way too much curve for me. But at a young age, I find the the flex is really important, and most kids are they're eager to get in a heavier flex because that's when the nicer sticks come out. But I mean, up until last year, I had a lot of my squirts. Most of my squirts are in 20 flex um, sticks,
Hmm.
and my daughter, who is 11, she's in a 20 flex stick. My son went to a 30 flex, and he's 100 pounds. He'll be a first year squirt only because he's too tall for the 20 flex sticks.
Now, hold on. Your son's going to be what, first year Pee Wee, you said?
Squirt.
First year squirt at
Hmm.
100 pounds. And you said, didn't you play sophomore varsity as 100 pounds?
Hmm.
What a, you were a little mini me, weren't you?
I was, I was,
Wow.
I couldn't grow facial hair until maybe my junior year of college. I was maybe, my birth certificate said one age, but I feel like I was 2, 3 years. Um, yeah, I played pro at 160. I walk now at 190, and I'm like, geez, if I could have been this weight, this would have been a lot nicer. Um, yeah, I don't know where he totally gets it from. He was just born a big kid, and but the detriment of that is he's got to carry, when you look at stopping force, he goes to stop, he's got to decelerate between 230 to 300 pounds on a leg. And so, people now when he has the puck and he protects it, it's really hard to get away from him because he's huge. But skating wise, my daughter's the inverse. She's 72 pounds. She skates like the wind and she's strong. And so it's hard because in youth hockey, the water bugs tend to do well until you hit Bantams, and then it starts to become kind of a physical game. Those young big players can tend to struggle a little bit because they haven't grown. When people say they haven't grown in their body, they don't have enough strength to body weight ratio to handle the G forces that the game puts them through. Um, that Not to get overly technical on that
No,
side.
that's a great way to put it.
So
I
yeah, go
I
ahead.
think too, when you're a big kid at that young age, there's a couple things that happen. One, things come a little easier to you. You know, you don't have to work as hard, maybe. And then the second thing is because of that, you don't learn the work ethic as the smaller player. That's just he's get doing four strides to year one, and when that playing field becomes level, I see the smaller player taking over the bigger player most times.
Yeah, I think it kind of depends. So, like my son, I'll give you an example. Really good hands, pretty good shot, off the charts IQ. I think his IQ got so good because he can't skate himself out of problems. My daughter, on the other hand, good hands, good shot, one of the most elite skaters I've ever seen for her age, and skates away from her problems. The problem is she doesn't know how to play with tempo. She only plays one gear, fifth gear,
Yeah,
full speed. And I was talking to Daryl Belfry about this. With her game, she needs to have the ability to cut back, protect, wait, what all the things he does naturally, because he doesn't have fifth gear.
yeah,
He might only have a second gear. And so I kind of look at it as, you know, each kid has their pros and cons when they're young. It's can they develop the other components of the game? Now, I was a super undersized kid like my daughter. I was tiny. I could skate like the wind, but to this day, I still have not really developed that third and fourth gear. I did now, but when I was playing college and pro, I was either going to beat you wide or I wasn't going to beat you.
yeah,
Uh, and so I look at it as like the big guys have their deficits, the little kids have their deficits, and when you get to Bantam, you get to high school or you get to junior hockey, it's who solved the gaps. Um, now if Eddie all of a sudden starts to skate like the wind, he's going to be at a huge advantage because he's genetically just a little bit further along. But those kids all catch up. And then those deficits that he has that maybe didn't shine through at a younger age, they'll get exposed if they don't get fixed.
yeah, yeah.
So one of the things I would tell you if you have a lot of parents that listen, I would tell parents this every time your kid scores a goal or makes a play and you get all excited, ask yourself this question: would that have actually happened at the next level? And I watch so many of these kids that skate down and they get a hat trick in a game, and not one of those goals would happen at the Pee Wee level.
Yeah.
And so they're able to dominate or really manipulate the play because they have the skill set that is super high, maybe their skating speed, but they lack these other things. And the problem is when you get to Pee Wees, that little superpower of yours is gone. And then all of a sudden they get up to that level and they fall off. And so to me, it's I don't look at the score or the points. I look at the plays within the game, and that's what I'm measuring. Is like that's a Pee Wee play right there, or that's a Bantam, right? It's different, right? I do the same thing with St. Cloud. When I watch my college guys, that's an NHL play, or
Yeah.
that's not an NHL play. And so I think it's a hard thing that you could probably do really easy. I can do easily. It's hard for a lot of parents that didn't play the game. They just see it as, well, they got a goal or they got an assist. The problem is we're on this curve and the kids are going up a year, a year, a year. You have to really evaluate, but would that work at the next level? And a lot of scouts, that's how they watch. They don't look at, oh, you had 40 goals. They'll say, you had 15 goals that would have actually counted at the next level. The
Yeah.
other 25, that doesn't get beyond this level.
Yeah. What what's inspiring you nowadays to keep pushing? Like who in the hockey world is teaching you? I mean, you have a wealth of knowledge. Who's inspiring you and you know getting the buttons pushed?
The person that I probably have grown kind of closest to and studied the most and have developed a good relationship with Daryl Belfry. Um, he's kind of not a lot of people actually know about him. He's kind of kind of a hidden little gem. Only really works with NHL guys. And I was very lucky to have an introduction from one of his former players. And we've developed a good relationship. And I try to study a lot of his materials. And I've really taken a liking to how he breaks down and he teaches the skills within the game. Um, and then there's a there's a doctor that I study. The three areas I study are Belfry. Um, there's a kind of a doctor that specializes in teaching patterns through the brain and using like neuro firing patterns, and then soccer. Soccer is the other thing I really spend a lot of time studying. I think that soccer has a lot more money that has been put towards it because it's a bigger business. And so a lot of their development models, their academies have more data, they have more research in developing players, talking, from a young level to a high level. They have more of a trend, right? You get those pro clubs get kids at 9 and they put them on a track. So they have a little bit more of this proven kind of philosophy. And so I find that interesting. And I think you asked like what drives me. I think probably one of my driving factors is, truth be told, whether it happens or not, it's her goal. Is like Sloane's goal is she wants to be in the Olympics. And so I look at it as I didn't have that like mentor growing up. It would be a real shame if I didn't move heaven and earth to learn as much as I could to help guide her along that path. And I would say that's why I got back into coaching was everything I look at it is I'm acquiring knowledge to help her have the right path. And, with her upcoming year where all she can do is learn and she can't play, um, that's, that's why I'm putting the time in the way I do is I want to help her reach her goals and my son and all the players I come in contact with. Um, but it's really she came to me when she was 10 years old and she's like, I want to be an Olympian. What do I have to do to get there? And I didn't do that. That's the inverse of what I did. I was like, how do I make the next team? And so for
Yeah.
her to have that vision and to look up to some of the women in Minnesota, which we're super blessed to have such amazing female hockey players, those are her idols. I mean, she likes McDavid and the pro guys, but she loves the Pete Up girls and the Olympics. Um, and so my job is to help her do the right things at the right time.
Can she do anything like shooting or stick handling stuff? There's nothing, huh? Wow.
Nope. So she's on the shelf, hockey term on the shelf. Like she can't do anything. Um,
She
she got
suffered a back injury. Is that
yeah,
what
so
happened to her?
yep, so she broke her L5S1. She got cross-checked from behind in a practice. Um, Came off, said her back was sore, didn't skate for a week. Asked her if she wanted to play. She went to a doctor. She got checked out. Everything was fine. Um, Went to a national level tournament, did well, came back. And she kind of just had this summer of like, my back's sore, my back's not sore. We kept bringing her into a doctor. They kept saying it was muscular. She's fine. And finally, I just insisted, I'm like, we're taking an x-ray. And they were anti taking the x-ray because of her age and just, ovaries and female health things. And finally, they took one, and we had basically the worst news you could have thought. It was broken, a pars fracture, and it needed to be surgically fixed. Um, the blessing is, you know, she's not paralyzed. All things go well with her surgery. She's going to get to play hockey again, but she's got about a 10-month recovery before she gets contact again. So surgery will be coming up this month. And, I look at it as, the first thing that happened when it happened and we got the news is I sat her down, and Jocko Willink has a video on YouTube where he talks about like the concept of good. And I just said, look, you can sit here and play poor me, make all the excuses and be mad at your teammate, all this stuff. Or we can say the opportunity here is that, you know, you're going to become amazing at hockey IQ. You have access to pro hockey, you have access to D1 hockey, you have all the access to turn this into a blessing in disguise. It's not that you're not able to train. Yeah, she might not be able to stick handle, skate, or shoot, but guess what? That's more time for her to watch more hockey, to learn more hockey. And so once she gets on the other side of the surgery, we're going to use that 9 months as a catapult for her to learn the game. And we're going to turn this unfortunate, 2025, 26 years of no hockey for her into a blessing in disguise. And, look back on it, hopefully in some, 10 years, she's going to say that was the thing that catapulted me is I had to learn the game because I had no other option. I had no other thing I could do.
Yeah. One thing that I would suggest, just because, when you go through something like that, there's just a lot of emotion, a lot of ups and downs, I don't know if she's planning on it, but just to keep a little journal about
Yep.
how she's feeling, because though she can remember that and then pass on that knowledge to other people. And why I say that is because I had to have hip surgery when I played for the Ottawa Senators. And somehow, my agent or whatever connected me with Marty McSorley, who had a similar hip surgery, had a conversation with him, and it was really, really beneficial because it gave me an insight of what's going to happen, the first couple months, because there's times where you're like, there's no way I can get back from this. How I'm screwed. Keep a journal, become an expert that you can help others. All the best, Sloan. I miss you, and I'll be waiting for you to come work on some stick skills over at my little lab underneath the garage. So give her my best, okay?
I will for sure.
All right, we are over an hour, my friend, and we could talk for hours, but we're gonna wrap it up here. If people are interested to learn more about you, John, where can they find you?
Head over on Instagram if they have it. Go to X, the letter, and then numerically the number seven. So X7 and then hockey. What they'll find there is just a lot of times I'll post just a lot of garage videos of like just different shooting drills. Sometimes I'll post a video about sharpen and skate. It's kind of, I don't have this like content plan. I listen to parents talk and then I try to go solve the question and say here's how to fix it. So sometimes I'll do a video on how to fix a loose blade in a skate, not have to drive to the store.
Yeah,
Sometimes I'll talk about if your kid's accuracy is off on their shooting, here's a simple drill you can do with them. I do try to gear, I think, a lot of my content for that like might squirt peewee, because I think that's kind of that audience that they don't know, and so
yeah,
I try to keep stuff simple for them. Like you don't have to go sign up for these crazy things. Like there's some simple. I'm a big believer, and I'm curious to get your take on this. people always ask me like, what should I do with my kid? I said, if your kid spent 20 minutes in the garage every day, stick handling, shooting, and farting around, they will be significantly better than a lot of their peers. And you don't need to get them in all this. Now, pair that with great skating, and I think you have a really good youth player. Have them watch the actual game of hockey, and now we're cooking. And it does. You don't need to hire somebody like me to skate your son or daughter, or work with you. I just believe like it doesn't have to be complex. Get them on rollerblades, get them skating, get them in the garage, go watch games, and then if they want to go hire an expert coach, great. But you don't have to feel the pressure to be shelling out that type of money to do it. You can just go fall in love in the garage. That's what I did. Um, and so I try to keep that message of like, you don't have to chase these camps or these programs around. You can just go have fun in the garage and it will help you a ton.
Yes. And moms and dads, it's not like a 6 or a 7 year old. You get a tarp that they can shoot on, you get some tiles, and you just say, go out there. And they don't know what to do. So it's a great opportunity for you, mom and dad. You may not know nothing about hockey, but you know how to learn. And you can watch a YouTube video and you can go out in that space. And I completely agree with you. It's consistency, it's not length of time. And, 30 days of 10 minutes a day, I mean, it's significant of deliberate trying to get better at something. So we're on the same page, dude. You and me. We should hang out more, but we're busy training people. All right, we got all your websites and stuff. Is it hard to get in with you? I mean, do you got to know someone?
I mean, so I've never done like how you work with people off ice. I don't do a lot of that. Um, I don't do any of that. And it's just because there's people out there like you and other experts that I don't what I what I try to do is fill a void. So everything I do is skating related or it's on ice skill that translates to hockey. So rim pickups or when you get the puck here, how do you move it and then what needs to happen mechanically to shoot, but what is the goalie doing? So the void I'm trying to fill in this space is like hockey skill meets hockey IQ in like a way you can apply it. And so typically we announce like our registrations for summer will go live here shortly, and we're normally full in 14 days. There's only so many kids I can work with. I have to keep room for our pro and college players, and then you know I still try to have somewhat of a life outside the rink. So yeah, I guess in a short way to think about it is we fill up pretty quick. We make it public. Our current clients get first access.
Yep. That's how it should be. You know, I'm the same way. Longest members, they get priority. I love what you're doing. And that's exactly how I was. There was no agenda on videos that you were going to make. It was just if one parent on a team or, someone had the question, the odds of someone else having that same question are going to be, and if you make a video, you can just refer the video to them. Here you go. This is, so keep doing what you're doing. Give my best to you traveled the hero's journey, man. You went out there and you experienced stuff, the hardship, you slayed the dragon and you came back and now you're making the game better than when it found you. So, keep having the perfect day, my friend, which is serving and teaching others out there how to chase down dreams. And that's really what it is. Once we're lucky that we get to get in front of kids that are just so passionate about wanting to get better. If there's anything I can do to help you, John, in what you got going on, please don't hesitate to ask because, we got to band together at times, but I think that we have consistent messaging and I'm glad to be connected with you. And I just really appreciate you being a guest on the Hockey Journey podcast.
Yeah, appreciate you having me.
Well, that concludes another episode of the Hockey Journey podcast. I can't thank you enough for stopping by and listening. I hope you enjoyed hearing John's hockey journey, and if you're searching for someone you can learn and get instruction from, Mr. Swanson is an individual I highly recommend. I put all his information in the description. Lastly, if you think there's someone in your circle of family and friends that might like this episode as well, please share it with just one person. It will really help me growing this hockey community. Again, I appreciate you being here. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, or submit a review. I hope to see you back here soon, and do me a favor, make someone close to you smile today. All the best, my friends.